Good afternoon. Today I'm joined by Nick, who's a company director from Heswall. Afternoon, Nick.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm not so bad, thank you. At least it stopped raining.
Indeed.
First question, really. Well, how long have you been in business? And tell us a little bit about the businesses you're involved in.
Sure, yeah. My first company, Laird Assessors, was set up in 2000. I was made redundant very quickly, at 2 days' notice. So set up Laird really without any business plan, or it was more of a panic to keep paying the mortgage. And not massively ambitious back in those days. Spent about a year and a half on my own working from home, and it soon started to gather momentum. No real USBs other than just doing a good job and getting quite a lot of return B2B business. I got the first employee the day before September the 11th, the Twin Towers incident. It's a day I'll remember for a long time. And it grew and grew and grew from there. In 2019, we had 70 staff. I think it was the zenith. Today we have about 30 staff, but we do about 25 to 30% more production, mainly due to automation and AI. And that brings me back to 2013. We developed our own software, and I happened to need a gas safety inspection. And the chap had finished the job on my drive, and he said, "Can I take down your address, please?" And I said, "Well, you're standing on it, surely you must know it somewhere." And we got chatting, and it turned out that what he did with boilers and air conditioning units, we were doing with cars. He was trying to organise and logically look after a fleet of people. So we built this, well, we adapted our software for him. And it became very evident that there was a business there, and it was at the early days of automation. And from there, that business is it's nearly 10 years old this year. And it's called LivePoint, but the product is probably better known as SwiftCase. And it's a workflow automation platform. Last year, AI burst onto the scene in affordability and accessibility. So we're now integrating a whole host of very, very exciting things in it. And I think we're only just at the tip of the iceberg, because there's a hell of a lot more to come. With a little bit of AI, it's taken us from 70 to 30 humans, but it's much more productive and given a better service. So that was SwiftCase. I've also got a translation and interpretation company, and that was mainly to solve a problem where Laird Assess were dealing all over the country. There's a shockingly more languages spoken than you'd realise actually in the UK. So, and not many people doing it very well. There was kind of very big boys who weren't particularly bothered about smaller clients. There was a few individuals who just concentrated on specific languages. So we saw a little bit of a niche in the market there to do a lot of legal translations where it needs to be certified. And I know a lot of you will be thinking, well, surely if the guy's into AI, can't we translate things with AI? And yes, we can, is the honest answer. We can translate them to understandability, if that's a real word, 99%. So we can get served in a Spanish restaurant quite happily. Right. The problem is if there's a slight misunderstanding in the translation, when it's something legal or medical, then it can lead to all sorts of big troubles, and there's horror stories all over the world of that happening. So that's the translation business, and we also have a property business, Whitfield Business Hub, that supplies serviced offices and virtual assistants.
Wow.
So this is small businesses who generally need just a office space on the go, everything included, lights and rates and whatnot. And they come for a month, some come for a year, some have been here longer than I have. Yeah, very straightforward. We do a lot of virtual receptions. So this is people who have small businesses but can't afford a receptionist, or don't need a receptionist, and they subcontract a lot of that to us, and we answer in their names, in their style and whatnot. So there you go. So sorry, it's a very long answer to what to do, but there we go.
So incredible variety. And as you say, what's that in 13 years, did you say?
Well, it's 23 years now. Laird was the first one back in 2000.
So 2000, wow.
Yeah. And a couple of failures along the way as well. So we had a recruitment company that was doing reasonably well and starting to grow until COVID. And then obviously COVID was not great for recruitment. So we decided to shut that down and send for actions elsewhere. It was also starting to encroach a little bit on the AI side, because AI tends to replace humans and we were trying to replace humans. So it was a little bit of a contradiction.
Conflict. Yeah, got you. When you think of business, Nick, is there anyone that springs to mind that's been an inspiration that would define success to you?
Loads, and I won't waffle on again on a big long answer, but yeah, very much so. Yeah, I remember seeing James Caan many years ago, and it's just sometimes it's just key things he said. If you find someone really, really good, whether you've got a job for them or not, get hold of them. And I've always remembered that, grab hold of great people. But yeah, I mean, Stephen Bartlett, I think, is a great inspiration. Elon Musk's Virgin, Richard Branson, Virgin Disruptors was a great thing. I wish he still did that. Yeah. So yeah, I suppose all the usual.
And do you read biographies, or is it podcasts?
More podcasts, yeah. Quite like podcasts. I love the High Performance podcast that Jake Humphrey does. I've seen Bartlett obviously is a great podcast. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I'll listen to all sorts, and those sort of things. You get snippets, and I think one thing I probably learned over the years is you never really stop learning, and you never should do either, especially in this day and age. There's so much to get excited about, and so much new technology around that you just cannot stop learning. We're employing people now who the jobs weren't there, just didn't exist 10 years ago. UI designers and developers and social media managers, even they weren't around when I was at school. So
very good. And you touched a little bit on COVID and the impact it had on your recruitment business. Yeah. Were there any other sort of learnings or changes you had to make to your business at the time, the pandemic?
Not particularly, no. Especially with Laird, because as I say, I was home-based back in 2000. Our software is cloud-based, so I think when the first lockdown happened, we disappeared home and we were back up running within an hour or so. I think it was more the human side of things that were, it was difficult to motivate and manage and inspire as much as you can do when you're in person. But we weren't massively affected from that point of view, other than the fact there were no cars on the roads and no cars crashing. So that was not great for business. Yeah.
Okay. And what would you say some of your biggest learnings have been as a business owner? You mentioned some of them.
I think to have confidence to make decisions quickly, and not to overthink things too much. If you're going to fail fast. In other words, don't flog a dead horse. I wouldn't say there's a certain biggest learning, but there's certainly little learnings that make up bricks in the wall. And I'm always learning. Keep an open mind, I think, is a big one.
Good one. Yeah.
Get out your comfort zone as well. Out of your comfort zone is where the fun happens. And I think sometimes we sit back a little bit and just try and make things slightly better, but sometimes we need to really properly think out of the box. I love the Henry Ford's quote of, if I ask people what they want, they would have said faster horses.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's a very blinkered, double analogy there, the horses are a very blinkered kind of view. So just be open-minded, and if you make a decision, go for it.
Very good. Some great lessons there. And what's your aspirations for the companies in the next 5 years?
Do you know what? I really don't know. Because if you'd asked me that 5 years ago, I couldn't have predicted the pandemic. I couldn't have predicted the kind of rise of AI. So I think for us, it's not a 5 year, it's really a 5 day thing, which is to just become 1% better every single week that we go. And listen to what our customers actually want rather than what we perceive that they need, and to just make ourselves just a tiny bit better in every single way, every day.
And you're in a very, very fast-moving industry as well, aren't you?
Very much so, yeah. I mean, especially in the automotive world, you know, we haven't seen the amount of changes to vehicles in you know, many years. Today we have hybrids and electrics, and they're made of different materials. We've got a lot of ADAS, you know, the passive safety equipment on it, self-driving cars, which just, you know, for years and years, cars were just made of steel and you had to drive them yourself, and you know, if you're lucky, you got an airbag. So it's you've got to keep up with that. But the great thing is we're also getting a lot of tech available to ourselves as well, so we've got to keep up with the technology that's available. So yeah, there we go. It's an unprecedented change at the moment.
Good. And you talked a little bit about the growth of your business and then how it's changed because of automation, principally in AI. How do you see the employment situation in the region now, Nick?
Dire. Mainly because I think someone said AI is not going to replace your jobs, but someone who runs AI will do. AI can do a lot of jobs, and there's a lot of excitement in the press at the moment about it passing the law bar and this medical exams and whatnot. It's true, it can be trained to do anything a human can do, and it's just going to get better and better and better. But really what we need is humans with the creativity and the ideas behind it to, you know, what am I going to do with this great thing? Rather than worrying about losing a job, maybe think, well, actually, maybe I can do twice as much with AI, or have a higher level of my job. I'm not doing as much boring data entry or something. It leaves me free to go on and do other things. And this has been happening for years. You know, if you think about a few decades ago, switchboards used to have people plugging in, you know, to put people through. We then moved over to switchboards, but you know, it's not mass redundancies throughout the world. It's just that those people are now doing slightly better and more interesting jobs and maybe have more leisure time. But yeah, it's going to be very, very tricky for people who don't keep up, certainly. And I think the last few years, there's been probably a big change in where in human attitudes towards work are, and it's slightly uncomfortable with the progress of AI. So I think it's going to be very, very tricky. I think there's going to have to be a lot of reskilling going on, and AI and automation. A lot of our automation is no code these days, so you don't have to worry about spending years learning how to code. You can actually probably go to the higher stages of that to actually make automation work. So I would probably say, yeah, there's going to be a lot of problems with employment, but there's the ability to reskill. We were at Web Summit, which is a meeting of a lot of tech companies, and about half the room were very, very excited about how their whatever product was going to replace this industry or that industry. But then probably the other half of the thing was, you know, we can't get machine learners and AIs and this and that and everything. So really what we need to do is take those people who are going to be replaced and reskill them into you know, the modern age.
And in your years of employing people and leading people, have you any lessons that you want to share on people management?
I think you've got to interview very, very well. I think interviewing is an incredible skill. Not that I'm saying I'm brilliant at it, but I often rely on other people within the firm to come in and give me a different view, ask different style of questions. And I think back in the early days, we used to just, you know, can you use a computer? Yep, you got the job. Now I think we go through a lot more either psychometric tests, depending on the level of people, or actually bring them in maybe for a trial day and see how they fit in with the team, see how they get on, see what the work ethic's like. And I think I've probably learned that don't want people who can do the job. I want people with the right attitude. But I can teach you how to do AI automation or cars or whatever it may be. That's something we've got loads of training in place for. what I can't teach is that get up and go, that fire in the belly to actually make things work and to change and to evolve.
Refreshing views, Nick. Refreshing views.
Thanks. Yeah. I'm not I'm saying I'm brilliant at it, but that's at least the way I aim. So.
Very good. Final question then. Looking back and thinking, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self, Nick?
Don't drink so much. I guess be a bit more confident, but I don't think an 18-year-old me would have probably I've got that. I think I've got children myself who are just 15 and 19, and they are still very much children. I think I certainly was. I think boys tend to be until they're deep into their 20s. So I'm not sure whether any sound advice now would fall on deaf ears back then. But yeah, I suppose be a bit more confident, explore and ask questions as well. Britain seems to struggle with asking questions. And if you think of a hobby or something you're excited about and someone asks you a question about it, you love talking about it. The last thing you ever think is they're a bit fit for asking that, whereas sometimes we hold back because we're worried that people might consider us a bit daft for asking that question. But yeah, that's probably
loads of questions.
Ask questions, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Nick, for that.
You're very welcome.
And it was great speaking to you. Some fantastic lessons there. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.